book of Ephesians. If you want to turn to Ephesians chapter 5, we're going to continue through the book of Ephesians. Remember that Paul was now imprisoned in he had his own rented quarters for 2 years. He was waiting for his moment of time before Caesar Nero. As he made his appeal to Caesar, he again rented his own quarters. He was, of course, under guard. He was incarcerated. And he wrote this series of letters called the prison epistles, the first one being to the church at Ephesus. It's thought that it was a circular letter that was went to Ephesus first and then circulated throughout that region at the many local churches and stuff. But just a tremendous working of God, and just a real encouragement and a wake-up call, not to be lulled into a sense of sleep or comfortableness, but an encouragement to go on in the love and grace of Jesus Christ and to really grow in Him. You know, I shared at the mission, I think, last week that a few days before I was on the left lane going out on the H1, and I was trying to stay the speed limit, but I was in the fast lane. I glanced up at my rearview mirror, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a solo bike cop was behind me. So the first thing I did was I wanted to step on the brake. I didn't, because I thought that this guy is so close, he's probably going to hit the back of my truck. So I immediately glanced down and I said, oh, okay, I'm not too far over the 55 speed limit, and I know down the road it is 60 miles an hour. So quickly I just flipped on my blinker to the right turn, and I moved over to the slower lane on the right hand side, and he sped by me, no problem. Well, it happened on Friday again, guys. Friday I was going up the H1, going or heading up towards Red Hill, and I looked up in my mirror, and then I said, hey, there's a solo bike cop, he's a few cars behind. And quickly I looked down at my speedo. I said, okay, I'm in the speed limit. I looked over, I said, yeah, I'm in the right lane. I'm following a car. You know, I'm not speeding in the left lane or anything like that. And as I looked up, I saw the cop. He just whizzed right past me on his bike, and he went up the Red Hill, and like nothing flat, and he was gone. But you know, again, it's that wake-up call for us. And Paul, you know, throughout the Bible, we're given these wake-up calls that to the little church, or not to the little church, but to the church at Ephesus. He says, hey, continue to grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ, as Peter would write later on. But again, the thing of the reminders that we have in the Word of God, it behooves us to pay attention and to stay awake during the times, not growing comfortable. But as we continue on in Ephesians 5, Paul begins in this chapter in verse 1 with the word therefore. He says, therefore be imitators of God as beloved children. And that word therefore, really, it's a ready reminder for us to look to the previous verses, or the previous chapter, or even the entirety of the previous chapters, the whole book, guys. But for the sake of expediency, I'm going to ask you guys to go home and you can read through chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 rather rapidly. It's a short little book, just chock packed full of great truths of God. But I'm going to ask you to go ahead and read the previous chapters. Just as a reminder, though, we did see in chapter 4 a call to unity. A call to unity. Paul exhorts the readers to walk in a worthy manner. He says in chapters 4, verse 1, he says, walk in that worthy manner and to be diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace, he says in 4:3. In other words, there shouldn't be division, there shouldn't be, hey, we're better than you are, we're competing with you, but we're all in it together. He says, preserve the unity of the bond of peace in the Spirit. His reminder being that there is one body, one Spirit, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father, who is over all and through all and in all. It's like God is all over, guys. He's there with us. He's over all. He's in all. He's through all. And he's working throughout the entirety of the body of Christ, doing his work. So he says, hey, don't be divisive in your thoughts. Don't be divisive in your thinking. But, preserve that unity. And, Paul wrote into the church at Romans, if at all possible, be at peace with all men. See? Now the body of Christ is being built up. He instructs the church to walk no longer in futility of mind. In verse 17, guys, he says, put off the old self and walk no longer as the Gentiles walk in the futility of mind, but lay aside that old self, he says, and put on the new self, being renewed in the spirits of our minds. In other words, again, here's the word renew, make new, to make new, and it's again that our minds needed some renewing. Our minds needed some renewal. We're so filled with garbage and junk and anger and bitterness and expectation, whatever it might be. But he says, be renewed in the spirits of our mind. Now here in chapter 5, verse 1, he says, therefore be imitators of God as beloved children. And the word imitate, or to be an imitator or follower in the King James Version is always used in a good sense, guys. As we imitate, it's always in a good thought that we ought to be imitators of God, imitators of Jesus Christ. It's always used as an exhortation. It's often accompanied by the word be, or to become an imitator or a mimic of the faith of those who are good examples. And I don't know about you folks, but I always looked up to those older brothers in the Lord. They were so faithful, they were so steady in their walk, in their relationship with God. We often look at Pastor Bill, we look at Pastor Chuck as those good examples for us. Here in this verse, it's used in a continuous tense that we continue to imitate and follow God as beloved children. In other words, we never stop growing. We never stop imitating. We never stop short of God's grace, but we continue on as mimics, as imitators of the good things, of those good examples of the faith in Christ Jesus. In verse 2, he says, walk in love just as Christ also loved you and gave himself up for us in offering and a sacrifice to God as a fragrant aroma. Here is the exhortation that we ought to walk in love. And it's the opposite of walking no longer as the world walks in the futility of mind. Now we kind of know about that because, I can think back that, hey, we were kind of futile in our thoughts. You might have been futile. You might have been thinking of everything else besides God. And that's where we were. And one time there was no thought of God, no thought of his word, no thought of the word of God, no thought of worship, no thought of good fellowship. We hung around all the guys, on the street, down at the park, on the corner. We did everything else except think about God and about Jesus Christ. Our minds were filled with that. And even for some, guys were intent on climbing the corporate ladder. For some of you, it might have been intent on relationships or work or accumulating wealth or possessions, whatever it might be, or trying to be the best person you were. And yet we were far from the love of God. And now here's the encouragement that we walk in love, just as Christ loved us, and he gave himself up as an offering, a sacrifice to God, a fragrant aroma. The example was Christ loving us, giving his life for us. So too we ought to walk in a love that gives, in a love that gives. In other words, we should take Christ's example as he offered up his life. We should offer up our life as a sacrifice to God, a fragrant offering, a fragrant aroma. Often quoted in Hebrews 12, Paul writes, not Hebrews 12, Romans 12, he says, live your lives as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to him, a reasonable service of worship. In other words, offer up our lives as a sacrifice of praise to him. The exhortation again, walk in love, live our lives as Christ loved us, live our lives in that same manner. But let not immorality or impurity or greed be named among you, as is proper among the saints. Immorality is translated fornication very simply in the King James Bible, guys. And in this verse, it's just literally illicit sexual intercourse. That which is outside the bounds of marriage. In other words, if you're not married, or you're married and you're having a relationship with somebody other than your husband or your wife, that's what the Bible simply calls fornication. I met up with a younger Christian brother on Friday. He came, he stopped me, he said, "I'm so and so." Yes, I know exactly who you are. And what is your name? Is your name this or that? Because I have trouble with identifying certain members of their family and stuff like that. He says, "I'm so and so, and things are going well. I've been working here." And I said, "Yeah, I haven't seen you out on the construction site." He was on the guideway, working for the contractor several years ago. And as a matter of fact, he worked for quite a few years for the previous real contractor. But he said, "Hey, everything is good. My family is good. My kids are getting big, but my wife is divorcing me. My wife filed for divorce, and she's with another guy, and we've tried, we've appealed. I begged her to come in. My family has begged her to come in for counseling. I'm in counseling with one of the pastors at our church, and but she refuses because she's living in that lifestyle of immorality, that lifestyle of fornication." And she told him, "Well, hey, we pray every night." And I just simply said, "Hey, sometimes our sin blocks our prayers, and God can't hear us because we want the blessing, but we're living in this state that's outside of His perfect will." She's still married to you, yet she refuses for counseling or trying any type of reconciliation. She's living in this place of immorality, of fornication. The impurity or uncleanness that Paul speaks of here speaks of not living by the moral codes of conduct. God has set specific rules or codes of conduct that we should be following. And we rather than staying away from things unclean, people are living in that unclean manner. In biblical times as it is today, guys, God hasn't changed. Paul wrote that the body is the temple of Christ. And this, he tells us, that promiscuous sexual union, or the joining of the flesh of two individuals, which is a defilement of Christ's holy place. In other words, if we are the temple of Christ, if we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and if we join ourselves in this illicit sexual encounters, we kind of defiling God's holy temple. Can you imagine that God considers our body as a holy temple? And He dwells within us. And He says, "Let no impure thing come in. Let no adultery take place." That word adultery is kind of an interesting word. It means that you have something that's so pure. And if you introduce something foreign, what do? You adulterate it. And that's where we get that word adultery, where you introduce something that's outside of this pure system that's contained. Within marriage, it's contained within the confines of the Lord, husband, wife, and Jesus Christ. If you allow something else to come in, it becomes adulterated. It becomes something that you have introduced, something foreign into this pure system. But the Marriage Counseling 101 tells us God instituted marriage as one of the most basic of all social relationships. It's right there at the beginning of the Bible, guys, in Genesis. And as the man would leave his father and mother and should be joined to his wife, the two should become one flesh, it says. And God intended marriage to be a permanent relationship, a covenant relationship, a commitment of two people that excluded all others from its intimacy. The saddest thing is sometimes you see these couples out in the world. They might be your neighbors, they might be within your family, they might be co-workers, but they have this girlfriend-boyfriend relationship. They live together, or they cohabitate, or they do whatever together for many, many years. And all of a sudden, because it seems real apparent to me, he says, "Hey, what happened to your girlfriend?" And she's gone. And it becomes so sad because I say, she was really a nice lady. And I've seen relationships like that in our condo, and you get to know the people, and you live in the same place for many years, and they're your neighbors, and all of a sudden, here today, gone tomorrow. And the lack of, I don't know if it's the lack of commitment or what it is, the lack that we're not married, pack up your bags and get out of here. They just, it's just as simple as that. It seems like it's not so simple, because literally, I think the hearts are joined together, and it's like that ripping. And it's almost that they experience that oneness, but now there's no relationship, there's no commitment or permanency of relationship, and there's that tearing away. God intended marriage to be a permanent relationship, a covenant relationship, and again, between two people, and that all others would be excluded from its intimacy. Marriage was to be marked by love and fulfillment that excluded promiscuity and perversion. Remember now, I just want to say this, guys. For the single person, being single is not a license to go carousing around or sleeping around. Okay, you single guys, it doesn't say you can go out to the nightclubs and bars and go on the pickup scene or anything like that. For the single person, the whole person is set apart for God. See, the single person, the whole person is set apart for God. Marriage is not designed to be an end all to itself, nor essential for fulfillment. Our fulfillment comes in the Lord. It doesn't come from our spouse. Our fulfillment for you single guys comes from Jesus Christ. God's servant might be called to have a mate. It could be either or. He could have a mate. Or like Paul, he found his freedom and fulfillment in attending to the Lord with no distraction. He was wholeheartedly committed. But he says that, hey, if you have those temptations, if you have those feelings, be married, he says. But why the marriage relationship is discussed at great lengths throughout the Bible is because our premarital throughout the Bible, because a great many situations and scenarios come up as two are joined together as one. Do you know that when you have two personalities, two distinct separate personalities, things clash, things bang, you bang heads and the sparks fly as you disagree on certain things. It's not real perfect that you're going to blend and everything else. I think that's why when we've gone through premarital counseling with couples, it takes about, we go about 8 or 12 weeks of counseling, just going through the Bible basics of what marriage is about. And again, I can't explain this whole thing, but as I was looking through these words, it really spoke to me about immorality and impurity, and not even speaking about greed, because some people are given over to greed and so on and so forth, but we're going to leave that for another lesson. Verse 4 says, there must be no filthiness or silly talk or coarse jesting that is used not fitting, but rather the giving of thanks. Paul doesn't belabor the thought of silly talk, guys. The point he makes is the giving of thanks. In other words, hey, what should we be doing? We can complain, we can grumble, we can become profane in our thoughts, in our language. Quite scary is the thought that the mouth reveals the heart. Hey, what's in our heart? Are we really filled with grumbling and complaining, or bitterness or anger, or our own thoughts, or are we given over to the heart of the Lord? Hopefully our hearts are filled with thanksgiving, and not the things of bitterness, not the things of complaining, not the things of, I hate to question God. I hate to say, why God this, why God that. I like to say, oh God, whatever you have here in the situation for me, you make that way for me. You make that way for it. But he says, let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things, the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. For this you know with certainty that no immoral or impure person or covetous man who is an idolater has an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ. The marks of conversion or a new life in Christ is hallmarked by a turning away from the immoral, the impure, the things of greed, and so on and so forth. Remember, Paul writes to both Jew and Gentile. The church was a mixture of not only Gentiles, not only Jews, but a mixture of both the Jew and the Gentile. The Jews had grown up with things of the temple, the things of the law of God, yet they were being influenced by the pagan religions of the Gentiles. Remember the pagan religions, they had their own altars, they had their own sacrifices, they had their own priests and priestesses, and much of the time their gods were worshipped through acts of sex and so on and so forth. But Paul was calling them out of the world that surrounded them, and this world was filled with perversion, lust, and greed. It's kind of like the world we live in today. You know, you can see it as we walk on the sidewalk. Somebody says, "Oh man, right there's transvestites. They're walking there in the middle of the road. They're trying to pick up guys and so on and so forth. They're out there day and night." And there must, since they're out there, there must be people stopping and trying to solicit these people for whatever they're giving. But the world was filled with perversion, lust, and greed. And Ephesus, we remember, was on a major trade route from the east and the west, and every new thought, every new lifestyle or manner of doing things was introduced, and many embraced the new morality or the new immorality, you might say. Many of the Jews must have thought that, wow, hey, this religion at the Temple of Diana is pretty hot stuff, man. You know, and I think I'm going to check it out. My friend invited me, my coworker, my neighbor invited me, and many were open to the new and more liberal lifestyle. I kind of thought that, you know, it's interesting that the news last night said that on Kauai, the whole island of Kauai was given over to an LGBT day. In other words, they devoted the whole day. I don't know if I got the alphabets correct, but it's the Rainbow Coalition, the Rainbow Movement of all these guys that are into the lesbian, I don't know what it's, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and I think some of them they're at a queue for queer too. And you know, and sure as it is, it's a queer lifestyle. But the whole island says, "Hey, we're making it a day of it. It's for these LGBT, whatever it is." But again, you know, we embrace this. We're throwing open the doors. We have the guys kissing guys and women kissing women on TV and everything else. There's no taboos. The walls are broken down. The morals are dropping, guys. And there's nothing holding us back. It seems that we're on this headlong race to the peak ahead. You know, we're just waiting to hit our head because, you know, we're just moving so quickly, out of control. And again, we're ready to hit the corner of the coffee table. But he says in verse 8, "You were formerly of darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of the light." Here it is, you know, Paul equates the relationship with Jesus Christ as they walk through this world. And he says, hey, we're continually walking in the things of the world. Now he says, walk as children of the light. In other words, we're not in the darkness anymore. We're in the light of the love of Jesus Christ. He says, you were formerly in darkness, now we're in the light of the world. In the book of Esther, on Wednesday, we saw that the sentence of death for the Jews was lifted. We're told that there was light and gladness and joy and honor. It's that same thought in Ephesians, that the darkness that once covered over us now is overshadowed by the light of the Lord. And we came out of the dark. We're in the light, man. We're overshadowed by the light of the Lord. A new day has dawned for the child of God, no longer held by darkness, now in the light of His love. Guys, this is what Paul is saying. Now continue to walk as children of the light. Walk in love. Don't walk as the Gentiles walk, being darkened in their understanding. But he says, lay aside that old self in chapter 4. Lay aside the old self and put on the things of Christ. Put on the things of Christ. In 9 and 10, he goes on, for the fruit of the light consists in all goodness and righteousness and truth, trying to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. As we are called to walk as these now in the light in God's fruitfulness, the call for us is to learn what is pleasing to Him. Our life in Christ is not a list of do's and don'ts. We're not living a life of do's and don'ts. But our life in Christ is much more than that. The Bible is not that. Listed is God's the Bible is that a love letter of God to us guys, telling us God's great plan of His love and His plans of rescue, His plans of redemption for mankind that He has willfully wandered away from Him. You know, in our own way, we just kind of wander away from the things of the Lord. In our own way, we have a way of getting lost. And like little kids, away from our parents, we just have the tendency. To get lost. If any of you have lost a little boy or a little girl, can you come to the information desk? We have them here. You know, and little kids, given that they're not under that watchful eyes, they have a way of wandering away. You guys remember that? The little ones, you gotta hang on to them. I see some kids sometimes, they're so wanting to get away from the parents. I tell the parents, hey, they have leashes in them for kids. You can walk them like your dog, put them on a leash. Don't let them get away from you, because again, they will. And that's how we were. We were trying to get away from God because we wanted to do our own thing. We wanted to have it now. We wanted to do it our way. We said, hey, our parents, they don't know much, and we know it all, and we're going to go our way. But as an outgrowth or response to the Lord, our reaction should be one of gratitude, and like children, living lives pleasing to Him. Did you come to that place where you said that God, you're so good to me? Help me to live a life that's pleasing to you. Help me to live a life that's not given over to my own pleasure, my own desire, but help me surrender my life to you and say, Lord, not my will, but your thy will be done. You know, much of the world and the flesh and the devil, they want to keep us away from the things of God. And sometimes, I don't know, we seem to put ourselves in a place that maybe we're almost setting ourselves up at times, it seems like that. What it is I'm not sure, but again, we have this thing that it's not God's will, but it's my will. And again, these are the things that we wrestle with. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Yeah, we do wrestle against flesh and blood because a lot of times it's our own flesh that we wrestle against. It's our own flesh that we wrestle against. He says, and do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is disgraceful even to speak of the things which are done by them in secret. Here the call is not to participate in the way and the deeds of darkness. Rather, let the light of the Lord expose them. You know, I don't know, but I do recall those days that we just like to hang around in those shadowy places, and we'd be sitting on the wall by the park, and we'd be under the cover of darkness, and we'd be doing things that we shouldn't have been doing, hanging out with the boys and getting into trouble. And these are the things. Earlier on, it was the worst problem was having kids chew gum. Then it became, the kids going to the bathroom and they're smoking in the bathroom at school, and they think that the teachers don't know. Later on, it was hanging around at the park and hoisting a few brews and stuff like that, and some other things. But again, the call is not to participate in the way and the deeds of darkness, but rather let the light of the Lord expose them. 13 says that all things become visible when they're exposed to the light, for everything becomes visible in the light. Like the bugs scattering when the lights are turned on, we know about that. We have bugs scatter when the lights go on. Or the true picture of the light being turned on at closing time at the bar or the nightclub. You always say that that person looks better in the subdued light. And when the lights go on at last call, they go, ah! Not too good looking. But that's how it is, guys. You get a true glimpse of the person and what they look like that was so attractive in the shadowy, subdued lighting. Now every feature, good and bad, exposed, and mostly bad. And it's so sad, guys. I talk about the guys walking the streets right on this back street and stuff like that. Maybe we have to go do some street witnessing on the street and just talk to the guys. the love of Jesus Christ. I'm not sure if you guys are up for that. But it's so sad that even in the shadow of darkness, they seem to come out. I don't know what day it was, but I was just making the corner. If it was after on Wednesday night going home from the service, right in the corner, some person was kind of tucked away in this little alcove right on the corner. And they want to kind of be out of sight in the dark, but yet they're waiting there for some unsuspecting person to come and to approach them and to offer them some money for whatever it is, for drugs or for sex, whatever it might be. But they kind of hidden away in the darkness. And that's what it is, that's what the dark is like, guys. And yet now so bold, so desperate, they're coming out in the light and selling their wares and so on and so forth. Mostly bad. 14 and 16 says that, for this reason it says, awake sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. Guys, as all things become visible when exposed to the light, the call here is to awake, sleeper, awake. Arise from your sleep, arise from the dead, and allow the light of Christ to shine on you. He says, therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as men who are wise. In this world, it's filled with many pitfalls, many U-turns, many shortcuts. And at times we want to take the easy way out. At times we don't want to walk that walk because that walk might be a little bit difficult. But be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise. I know that going for my walk around my neighborhood in Salt Lake, somebody went ahead, and because the sidewalk has become so uneven, they went ahead with a spray can of paint, and they painted every step, every place where the sidewalk is pushed up or pushed down, or there's a hole in the sidewalk. They went ahead and spray painted all of that. So as you walk, you can kind of see the pitfalls. You can kind of see the trip hazards. Last night in a parking lot, I stepped out of the car. I stepped into a hole in the parking lot where we were at, and they said, wow, you didn't even see that. But it's so easy because guys can easily twist their ankles, trip, fall, and get injured, get hurt, and that happens all the time. And again, that's why Paul is saying, be careful how you walk. Not as unwise men, but as wise. And the spiritual application is not saying that we are physically going out, we're physically seeing all those bumps and all those cracks and all the lifting up of the sidewalk and the sinking of the sidewalk. But he's using it in spiritual terms, that the world is out there, the world has many distractions and many distractions to lead us astray. And again, what he does and what he wants us to do is be careful how to walk, not as those unwise men, but as the wise. The age we live in times, guys, given over to wickedness and evil, people perish daily, some with the Lord, some without. It can come so suddenly. You can kind of think that the other night it was all over the news that that airplane crash up on the North Shore. First there was 9 lives, now all of a sudden it's 11 lives lost. And it seems that the plane just took off, and maybe, I don't know if it even got off the ground, but it ran into a fence at the end of the runway there on Dillingham Field. And in a moment, just in a few seconds, those lives were wiped out. Whether they were in Christ or without Christ, I think that they were just planning to have a good time, planning to have a real happening experience while they're here in Hawaii. They were going to go out, they were going to do skydiving, and just have a little bit of adventure. The guys were there videographing the jumps, taking pictures of the tourists. There were guys who were just, those instructors, they were strapped to the guys jumping and stuff like that. They never thought that, they just thought that, it's another day at work. I already made 3,000 parachute jumps. This is like nothing. Or another guy says that I'm trying to make my 1,000 jumps this year. And it was just another adventure. It was just another mark on the chalkboard. There's another jump for me. And yet, in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, their lives were taken. And you gotta think that, hey God, were they right with you? Were they believers? Were their hearts given over to you? Or were they ready to make their maker? People perish daily, guys. Some with the Lord, some without. It can come so suddenly. We live in a world, guys. I think that probably all of us here today, we know the Lord. We're committed to the Lord. We're trying to walk with the Lord. That's why we walked here. We got up this morning and we said, I'm getting up. I'm going to church. I'm going to worship the Lord. But there's so many more. Every week we see other guys. They walk into the ice cream store. And I was thinking it would be good if all of them were up here. But there are many more given over. Many more. I could say that maybe they go to church on Sunday night. Maybe they go to church on Saturday night. I'm not sure. You gotta hope. But this is the world we live in. A world filled with darkness, and a world that the light has come in to shine the light of the love of Jesus Christ. Paul says, now that you're saved by the Lord, you're already seated in the heavenly places in Christ. He says, now walk with it. Walk with it. Grow in the grace and knowledge. Peter, the words of Peter stick out in my mind. Grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ. Amen, guys? Let's pray. Father God, we do want to thank you this morning, Lord. We thank you for the exhortation as how we are to walk